Right, ready when you are, Karen.
Good morning, everyone. Let's commence this meeting to open at 9:30 a.m. So hi, I'll be your presiding member today. I would like to acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia and pay respects to their elders past and present and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the MIDAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the MIDAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of those regulations. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical advice devices through the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. So beside myself today, Karen Hyde as presiding member, I have to my right Ms. Francesca Lafante, deputy presiding member, and to my left Mr. John Symes, specialist member, and Councillor Catherine Barlow from the local government town of Cambridge. Also, Councillor Georgia Randliffe joins us on screen from the town of Cambridge. And later in the meeting, we will be joined by Mayor Philomena Piferati and Councillor Joshua Ebson, local government members from the city of Bayswater. We've not received any apologies, we have received 2 apologies today from Councillor Ben Mayers from the town of Cambridge and Mayor Gary Mack from the town of Cambridge. We have no other members on leave of absence, and we have minutes available on the website from previous meetings for noting. So we turn to part B of our agenda for the town of Cambridge. Could I first seek declarations of due consideration that all panel members have duly considered documentation contained within the RAR and part B of the agenda and part B related information? Could I see a show of hands, please? Thank you very much. Everyone has given due consideration. Disclosures of interest. I have 2 impartiality interests received from Councillors Barlow and Randliffe, in that the agenda item before us has been considered at council meeting. As part of that declaration and in accordance with section 249 of the DAP Code of Conduct 24, they've declared that they participated in that meeting, but under section 212, they acknowledge that they're not bound by any previous decisions or resolutions of the local government and undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matters before us today. I've considered these matters and determined that there are no interest that would prevent the councillors from participating or voting in relation to the DAP applications of this meeting. So you're comfortable with that from Councillor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Randolph also. So we have no Form 1 applications in this part of the agenda, but we do have a Form 2 DAP application, which is item 4.1, lot 800 Northwood Street, West Leadville, and amendments to the works already carried out. I have a number of presentations today, and I would like to remind presenters that in accordance with clause 482 of the DAP Standing Orders, presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and there's been no extension granted. We will monitor that time and let you know when we get close to your time. Presenters are encouraged to focus on the main aspects and to verbally present within the designated 3-minute time frame. Then I will invite panel members to ask questions, and after that, then I will refer to our officers at the town of Cambridge for any follow-up comments or further questions that panels may have. So first of all, we have Miss Amelia Brown, pardon me, thank you. You're presenting against the application. If you'd like to take a seat just in front of the screen, we can all see you.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you to the presiding member for the opportunity to present today. Prisoners in our own home, that is how our family has felt every single day since this daycare opened 14 months ago. Our backyard has become unusable due to two reasons: a lack of privacy and extreme noise. I have given examples of what we're dealing with. I'm told the videos aren't working, but I know that you've seen those.
Rest assured we've seen them as
Yes.
they were circulating in the
Yes.
presentation.
For the past 14 months, our privacy has been destroyed. We've felt like zoo animals subjected to kids peering into our backyard because of the simple fact that this developer didn't follow the rules when it failed to build a solid west-facing balustrade. It's not the kids' fault. It's a completely natural, inquisitive thing to want to peer underneath the balustrade, but it proves the point of why a solid balustrade adjoining residential properties is required under local planning policy. Not only do we now have no privacy, we now spend most of our time inside with windows and doors closed because the noise created from the 5 open play areas just metres from our property is so unbearable. On top of this, we also have to endure overwhelming invasive noise and diesel fumes from a fire pump, which clearly breaches noise regulations and exceeds the limits set in the approved acoustic report by at least 400%. At the start of this year, we welcomed our 3rd son. That pump has woken our sleeping baby numerous times. How can it possibly be allowed to operate when it breaks noise regulations so blatantly? Inside our home is also affected. When sitting at the dinner table with our 3 children, the glare from the west-facing wall is so extreme, we simply cannot face the building without being blinded. The daycare also frequently has all its lights on overnight, flooding our hallway with light. We have photos from all hours, from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. How can this be considered to have no impact on amenity? Overall, not being able to take our energetic kids outside for fear of being watched and overrun by noise has made every single day challenging. I can't emphasise enough how detrimental this saga has been on my family's mental and physical health, and all of this because orderly and proper planning has been ignored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frew. Do panel members have any questions of Ms. Frew? No, thank you. All good. Thank you very much for the presentation. Second presentation we have is from Mr. Tom O'Rourke, who is I'm not sure if you're presenting for or against Mr. Rourke. Against, presumably.
Yes.
Thank you very much. When you're ready.
Thank you, presiding member, for allowing me the opportunity to present today. It is now abundantly clear substantial changes have been made to a number of aspects of this development, and the impact on our property and my family has been devastating. Some of the changes have resulted in consistent, intrusive noise every day, a significantly different external appearance of the building, light spill into our property at all hours, significant changes to landscaping, including a substitution of a feature tree to a species that has a mature height less than half the height of the one originally proposed, and a fire pump room that cannot adhere to permitted noise levels, as well as emitting diesel fumes into our property. The fire pump room itself has doubled in size to house bigger and noisier equipment. The impact of that noise on our property is intolerable. Then there are the diesel fumes that are emitted towards our property. Put simply, this cannot exist in its current form. The Form 2 application requests a number of departures from the planning framework, including the removal of solid balustrades. Solid balustrades are required under Local Planning Policy 2.5 in the residential interface node to lessen the impact of development by providing privacy and give noise protection to adjoining properties. This requirement has simply been ignored. When considered alongside previously approved departures, like encroachment into the rear setback area, the cumulative effect is huge. These are just some of the examples which prove the development overall is significantly different to what was given the green light. These changes are not consistent with orderly and proper planning. As the panel is aware, they shouldn't be assessed in isolation. They should be considered cumulatively and holistically with previously assessed amenity impacts. All in all, the alterations to the development are significant and result in a development substantially different to what was previously assessed and approved. I believe a Form 2 application, which is reserved for minor alterations only, is wildly inappropriate in this instance and would offend against orderly and proper planning to consider them in this way. In conclusion, given the planning controls in place, how can this altered development possibly be fit for purpose in its location? And how can you expect homeowners to live with its impacts every single day? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. I'll ask panel members, did you have any questions for Mr. O'Neill?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now have three of the applicant team, Mr. Kevin Chu, Mr. Andrew Baranowski and Mr. Peter Simpson, in support of the RAR. They have been allocated 3 minutes each. So, Mr. Simpson, are you organising things, or are they just running in the order of Mr. Chu, Mr. Baranowski, and Mr. Simpson?
Pretty much.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Mr. Chu, you represent Giorgio Developments. Mr. Baranowski represents Plan E, the Landscape Architect, and Mr. Simpson, BTS Town Planning.
Morning, presiding member and fellow DAP members. Thank you for this opportunity to present. My name is Kevin Chu, Development Manager for Giorgio Developments, and today I'm representing landowner in support of the approval for all the amendments before you today. In addition to the written chronology that we provided, the project was first conceived around 2019 and the tenant for the Early Learning Centre has been secured. Since then, throughout the effects of COVID, we've managed at great expense to finish the project as all of our assumptions made in 2019 around availability, trades, materials and costs were considerably updated by the time we commenced works. Of all the challenges faced during this project, I would like to emphasise the unforeseen light reflection and glare caused by our building to the neighbouring properties along Wilford Street and Pepper Lane. No one had expected the glass balustrade to reflect the amount of light and glare No one had expected the glass balustrade to reflect the amount of light and glare. The abating glare reflection has made the balustrade opaque, and as a result, it has unfortunately concealed most of our landscaping. The approved clear balustrade was requested to be made solid halfway through construction at the request of some landowners through the town. However, given the glass had been manufactured, we did not consider this change. We now have solid wood balustrade, which in our opinion is a poor outcome, as it obscures most of the plants that need someone to continue this request. A landscape architect will go further into the landscape. I'd also like to touch on the fluted concrete panels. We'd like to express our disappointment that these panels were missed. Concrete panels were only partially coordinated on the construction documentation, and this was only realised when I undertook a post-project review. There were 2 concrete flat panels that were installed in the ground floor in the Western Power Transformer and driver engines. However, all of the level 1 and level 2 fluted panels were missed on the documentation. As a result, they were manufactured and delivered to site. As a result of the panels being missed, the suspended slabs were not designed to bear the weight of these concrete panels, and the structure will not be able to support these panels down. Since the completion of the project, we've worked with the town in a very responsive manner. With difficulties in delivering a project in a tough time, we request that DAP accept all the changes presented to you today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chu. Now, I'll just ask panel members, did you want to hear from the other panel members, from the other applicants first, or would you like to ask questions at this point of Mr. Chu?
I'd like to hear from the whole applicant team, if that's possible, and then go to questions. There might be double ups.
Yes, that's certainly possible. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Thank you very much. So we'll invite Mr. Baranowski next from Plan E, the Landscape Architects, to make his 3-minute presentation.
Thank you.
When you're ready.
Thank you, presiding member. Thank you for the opportunity of coming in, chatting to you today. Yes, Andrew Baranowski from Plan E, we're the landscape architects on the project. So I guess Kevin sort of discussed a bit about the chronology of the in and outs of what's happened through the process. I guess from a landscape point of view, the changes that have been made really related to conversations that we've had, numerous conversations we've had with the council. So, for example, at ground level, we originally proposed some large trees, mangoes, avocados, and such along the laneway to assist with screening of the building, but also just to provide children with edibles that they could actually utilise as part of their study. So this was the council basically vehemently opposed this. We were basically there negotiating to put in smaller citrus trees, which will still grow to probably 3 or 4 metres maximum. And then subsequent to that, we've also installed creeping and Boston ivy on the blank walls. So in time, that vegetation will basically climb up the building and provide a green buffer, if you like. So then on the upper levels, what we found is we had a detailed assessment done by the BCA consultant and the assessment consultant. So from a safety point of view, what we had to do basically was move some of the planters inboard from the balustrade edge, predominantly because obviously from a safety risk climate point of view, and subsequent also with discussions with council, some of those planters were smaller planters were put back with climbers. So in time, again, the snake vine that's basically being planted on the different levels will grow up the columns gradually into the arbor beyond. So I guess then again in time that landscape will mature, and I think it'll help soften the impact of the building and also provide additional shade and softening generally. So really the drawings basically show the departures from what was originally proposed, and then based on the safety work that was carried out, the changes that were done. So from an extent of landscape point of view, or the numbers of plants, the trees, the landscape generally, we believe that it's fully compliant with what the intent of the DA was. And from our point of view, I think, as I keep saying, in time it will develop and the maintenance from our point of view is really good. So we're keen to let the thing develop and grow. Great.
Thank you very much. Now we have Mr. Peter Simpson from the BTS Town Planning for the application.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm obviously not going to go through the submission of lodge, but I just want to make a couple of key points. This tree has addressed the chronology of events. Obviously, it's quite a long process we've been going through now. As indicated, the site's been operational for 12 to 14 months. In terms of landscaping, we do not agree with the city's conclusion. There are more trees proposed on the site now. During this process, we've obviously gone through this process with the town. Initially, they considered all the amendments to be minor. They also were satisfied by the amended landscape plan outcome. I'll provide the details. I also note the majority of these changes were identified in the building permit and at occupancy. So all the way through the process, we've highlighted what these changes were and how they've occurred through the process, including obviously the change to the balustrade to make it opaque. I just want to deal with a couple of the comments of the submitters. In terms of the acoustic impact, obviously condition 9 of the existing approval deals with the acoustic, and it's appropriately addressed at that point and addressed as part of that condition. Obviously, the building's been operational for 12 to 14 months, so if the town considered that there was an acoustic issue, then obviously they would have taken action to address that matter. In terms of the operational times of the childcare, that's again condition 15, which limits the operational. Outside those times, there's obviously things that occur in the building, cleaning, the office exists at ground level, there could be training, those sort of things. In terms of overlooking, this is obviously commercial use. There's no overlooking provisions. I also note that this site only occurs during business hours of the day and not on weekends. And I suppose the only other thing to mention is that when this was originally approved, it had clear balustrades. So the inclusion of opaque balustrades, which was fundamentally to address reflection, has also improved the privacy to the adjoining owner. So while there have been a number of changes, many of these have resulted from the detailed design of development and also to address the concerns raised by neighbours. That's obviously been a process been ongoing for the last 12 months. We respectfully request approval for all of the changes that we've proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. And appreciate that everybody today has kept to their 3-minute time limit. Very much appreciated. Look, I'll ask panel members now if they have questions of the last 3 presenters. I might, for ease, see if our panel member, Councillor Randliff, online has any questions. No, not at this point. Okay. I might see then if anybody else on the panel here in the room. Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Barlow.
In one of the reports I read, in the original acoustics, that the correct measurements wasn't done, but an older form was done and not the correct up-to-date one. Is that correct?
That you obviously pick that up from the submitter's email from the town suggesting that. There's obviously a couple of parts of that email which suggested that. I thought you were addressing the submitter had included an email from the town, which the town said that there was I think it was a 2 or 3 decibel variation. Yeah. And so that might be correct, but also in that response, it also identified that the acoustic report didn't take into account a whole other range of matters, such as the fence on the neighbour's property, the balustrade, all those sort of things. So I'm not sure you can draw one conclusion from that comment in terms of the acoustic. And as I said, this has been operational for 12 to 14 months. And so there's been obviously quite a significant period of time to address any acoustic issues if they exist.
Can I have a follow-up question to that specific question? Could anyone on the panel the presenters can provide a comment? Could you advise the acoustic report that was undertaken following the changes that were made to the development, following post-construction, and what were the findings of those? That would be for you. Any of the panel?
We didn't do a post-construction report. So one hasn't been done. We did have the town come to us a number of times requesting noise measures on some capital park, mainly to do with car park exhaust and also the air conditioning. And for instance, in one of the instances where no, I suppose, compliance issue was picked up and identified. The second time, I don't believe there was anything confirmed, but by our own investigations, we had looked at the exhaust fan that was discharging out onto Norfolk Street, and we identified that there certainly could be improvements on that fan. We suspected it would be that fan because the time that the town went out to do the measure wasn't a compliance issue. And one of the residents on Cambridge was saying it's intermittent, so we couldn't pick up the time to measure at that time. But we've since silence for ameliorating the noise of that exhaust fan, and we have to further complaints.
So my second question from that is the acoustic report as part of the changes that you're requesting, as we've heard in the information contained in the RA and from another 2 presenters this morning, there are noise impacts on the neighbouring property. Have you, I suppose what I'm interested in trying to get my head around is the extent to which that document, a completed, updated acoustic report provides clarity on the changes that you're requesting and the impact of those changes in the context of the planning request you have before us today. So you're requesting changes. Those changes go to some of the issues that have been raised in the RAR and in the presentations about impacts. And I'm wanting to understand the relationship, i.e. whether the changes you have made to your building are resolved through the treatments you've put on the as constructed. And I've got a question because that information you're saying has not been done, and therefore is not before us today to give a full consideration on the changes that you're requesting and the treatments, principally the alternate treatments that you are asking a determination from us today. That's fundamentally my question.
Yes, so we didn't do a amended acoustic report as part of that Form 2 application. Obviously, this one's a little different in terms of that Form 2 because we're not requesting changes that could occur. We're actually addressing changes that have occurred and have occurred for the last 12 to 14 months. So I appreciate your comment, but I suppose our response is, well, it's been operating for that period of time. The town hasn't raised any concerns regarding the acoustic impacts of development when they've been outside on multiple occasions, and therefore, I suppose it's retrospectively applying for those changes.
Yes, I understand that. What I'm trying to get my head around is, are the treatments that you've got in place, those that you refer to as a retrospective consideration, that we refer to as a variation under the DAP provision. So we are different from council in terms of the information we deal with, obviously, the provisions that deal with us. What I'm trying to get my head around is whether you have undertaken sufficient amelioration treatments or whether there are different things that are required to the proposal in order to address that. And that's a question that I have, because I cannot accurately answer whether or not some of those changes you've asked from us are completely suitable in the context and whether other things should occur, because I don't have that material in front of me. That's really the thrust of my question.
I suppose that comes back to the initial point I made, is that that's a condition of existing approval. So we need to obviously meet the acoustic requirements of the building. Obviously, the town can go out and measure it. If there's an acoustic issue, then we'll have to address that as part of that. Whether that means some more acoustic treatments are required, then that would be the case.
Just as a follow-up to that as well, the height of the balustrading is what now?
1.5, and from the slightly higher as a concrete hole.
Right. The acoustic report did talk about solid fencing, which by implication wouldn't suggest that there are gaps or any level of permeability. The original acoustic report done in 2020-2021 around that time also suggested that there should be review of the mechanicals once in place. So it was inferring ongoing rules monitoring at that point, at which there should be some record. So it's really following up on Mr. Fanti's question. What's the evidence of what's occurring at the moment and meeting the recommendations of that noise acoustic report, and what are the consequences of any of the changes that have occurred on the implications of that acoustic report.
So obviously, as Kevin said, there wasn't an acoustic report done post. I suppose the only thing we can say to you is I'm not necessarily in agreement that the acoustic report originally said solid balustrading, but you know, we'll take that as it is. But and as I said, so I think the only response we can provide is that the acoustic report was done, the amendments were done, we went through building permit, we went through occupancy, which included 6 to 7 people out from the town out on site. And that involved going through the whole building, doing all the car stackers, all that sort of thing. And it's been operational for the last 12 months. So I can sit here and say, as a surrounding landowner, that acoustic doesn't apply, but there's no evidence to suggest that. And obviously, the submitters have been in constant contact with the town, and the town hasn't sought to take any action or matters as a result of any acoustic issue.
Yes, that's a matter for the town. We can raise that with them. But my reading of the acoustic report recommendations is that there should have been a review in place once the mechanicals were in place. But I'll ask panel members, are there any other questions?
Yes, I have two other questions. My second question is probably to Kevin. You talked about the fluted concrete panels being missed and not constructed on site. You have a request in for those to essentially not be provided on the site. And I think it was cited a number of times. It's been cited construction costs. I suppose from our perspective, it's not a land use planning matter. It's something that our legislation does not provide for. So my question is, so what are your alternate design options? And there's the RA refers to comments from the DRP. I'm interested in the information I've got here didn't provide, you maybe can clarify that. What are the design options on the exterior of the building and the treatments from the exterior of the building? I didn't see material that referred to that you're putting forward.
No, so the panels, just to be clear, they weren't taken out as a cost. They were taken out because of the missed in the documentation. So we're not proposing to put them back in, given that on completion and on review of how deep those balconies are and how set back those play areas are, and the addition of obscuring the balustrade, there's, I suppose, not as much light coming through to those spaces as the tenant would like. So the intention is to pull out the glass balustrade and to replace it with a solid or lightweight solid similar material. What we're asking for is the acceptance of what's historic at the moment, which is the obscure glass balustrade.
So do you have any further comments, you or any of the other team, about the appearance, the impact of the exclusion of those, and the request that you have before us today, which is to support the removal of those, or to support no panelling going in? As I said, the RA refers to those as being part of the architectural element as seen from the exterior of the building. I understand your comment about the operator. However, the planning, we don't get involved with the operator. That's a matter that's beyond us. We're involved with those planning issues that, in this particular case, talk to the exterior and the visual from the exterior. So I understand your comment about the operator. My question is around planning and design as viewed from the exterior.
Yeah, I suppose going back in history, the panels weren't a requirement of DRP. They were panels that our architect came up with initially. I think hindsight, being able to have it operational for 12 months is actually an important point, because when you're actually up on those balconies, you can see the limitation of light now flowing into those, particularly internal spaces. So again, there is, while it is a operational matter, it is also a planning matter, because the ability to achieve natural light into these spaces is a planning matter. And so that's, I suppose, one of the conditions. We also are of the view that we don't think that the panels would add to the facade. We've obviously got photos of the facade. We're not convinced that those panels would result in an improvement that the town or the BRP suggested in terms of the build form.
Thank you. And my final question is probably to Andrew Lansdowne, and it is around your comments about the treatments. And there's a significant amount of commentary relating to landscaping. We changed the landscaping and the impact of that, particularly, and I'm referring externally, the use of landscaping under the planning framework from both an environmental perspective and to soften the overall development. So my questions in that context are, specifically, you refer to type of tree species. You've talked a little bit about what the town has said, and I will have similar questions to the town about the same sort of matter. And you've also talked about a climbing fig on it. I'm interested in understanding specifically what are the anticipated timeframes for these to be substantial visual green elements from the exterior, and what is the what is required in order for that to be achieved. And that is in the context of the comments in the RA that refer to substantial green vegetation of height being replaced with very low level species. Can you provide comment, please?
So I guess starting from the laneway, the original concept DAPAC had, we're proposing mangoes and I think some citrus as well as avocados, which would have in that context and in the space we had available would have reached probably 8 to 10 metres in height. So that the conversation that we had with council related to they were concerned that the trees were too big for the lane, and basically there will be issues with vehicle movements and there'll be complaints from neighbours and such. So basically we agreed to change those species to smaller citrus, which would only get to sort of 4 or 5, maybe 3 to 4 or 5 metres in height. And in terms of the time frame for those to achieve mature height, it's probably a 5-year window. In terms of the climates on the walls, so the creeping fig and the Boston ivy, you can see from the photos the Boston ivy is already starting to get up to about 1 metre high. So in terms of timeframes, another 2 seasons, 2 summers, the Boston ivy will pretty much cover the first floor, those panels in the laneway, and then the fig take a little bit longer. That's a bit slower to establish, so that's a 5 to 6 year time frame. In terms of the planting on each of the levels, essentially again we've got a limited height because of the canopy as well as the shade structure, so that the trees that are in there, they're in pots, they're not in the ground as they are down below. They'll only get to 2.5 to 3 metres in height, and that was always the intention. Subsequent to conversations with council, we did install smaller pots that still meet the climbing risk requirement, and installed snake vine, Herbertia, the scandals, which will probably take about 3 years to start to get up into the columns and into the actual arbor structure as was intended. In terms of the trees along Northwood, so originally we had two trees proposing there. We put in 3. Near a brachypipes or a little flame tree. So again, they were put in as a mature height. They were put in about 3.5 metres in height, and they'll get to probably 10 metres in 10 years. That's the sort of time frame. That's a verge. The verge tree. Yeah. And again, those originally we had pine trees. Council didn't approve those. We changed those to the Illawarra pines.
I've got a question. Have those ones been planted in the laneway there?
Yes. Again, the citrus is a very slow growing tree. They'll put in
Just next to the exit of the driveway. So originally, I think the original day actually showed no tree.
So just welcome.
yeah.
And then
On our presentation, there's photos of and it's got photos of the trees at the rear.
yeah, so I went from no trees to mango, avocados.
There was a big tree that was, I thought that was one of the provisions that was cut out.
Yeah, we had to remove one tree, and then in the approved DA landscape package, there were no trees in the laneway. And then we thought that wasn't great, and in consultation with the operator, having edible fruit trees was no experience for children, so we wanted to put some trees in the laneway. And that was the first iteration, which we actually planted, and we had to remove them maybe 4 months after. That was an avocado, mango, and an olive tree. And then in consultation with the town of Cambridge, in agreement in January this year, was they'd like to see citrus trees instead. So we've actually removed trees that have been planted for about 6 months that we want to grow taller, larger. And we did say that the operator has a landscape maintenance contract in place, so any concerns on fruit dropping and vermin eating fruit and branches overhanging the laneway, they could go and undertake pruning of those trees. The town did plot those trees, so we've resorted to trees that they were happy with, which are the citrus trees.
Yes, just one for Peter. In your submission, you've got an email trail which shows some landscape drawings being submitted to the city, and then an email back from the city in January saying the town is satisfied with the attached plans. Now, the question is, are those plans the ones which have actually been part of the so
Yeah, and council actually went back and checked to make sure.
So in your view, council has seen the plans, seen the landscape, and it's approved the plans and you have executed.
So, yeah, I suppose what, and it's my error that I omitted was the next part of the email trail, because I couldn't find it at the time, was that then there was discussion with the town and Kevin in terms of when the landscape was actually installed, and then we advised the town that it had been installed, and at that point the town said, as you are now required to do a Form 2, where it's stopping the discussion.
The action from the town. So they were chasing us up to ensure we comply, because our DA commission said landscaping and meet the approved plans 6 months from occupancy. So that's when we went through this change, implemented the change, and said, we've completed the installation of those plans that you saw and accepted in January. And that's when the response said, given the Form 2 is now in play, we're not going to come out into the
Accepting that it wasn't DRP's suggestion to put the fluted concrete panels in, but rather they responded to the architect's design in the positive, because they felt that those panels plus a number of other treatments, which included, I think, colour on the stairwell, added to, as well as brick paving the driveway and a number of other things, added to the variety of materials and the textures, and provided a useful transition between commercial to residential, and gave more of a mixed use feel to the development. Now, what's before us at the moment is that's all changed, and a number of those things that the DRP supported have not been installed. The DRP comments, which you'll have seen through the RAR, have made some suggestions as to alternate treatments that could supplement those things which have been omitted for whatever reason, and to reintroduce a level of colour, texture, materiality. Have those things been considered? Are those things something that could be worked towards?
I suppose I'll let Kevin talk about what potential options there could be. This has obviously got a long history. You talked about colour and texture. Part of that was public art we were proposing, which was to provide a significant public art outcome on the building. I'm not going to talk about what happened because I don't particularly want to get sued by previous people that were out of town in Cambridge, but at the end of the day, we went through the whole process of public art, and then it was stopped at the last minute, and they said, we're not going to allow you to do public art, you have to pass the vote. So yeah, no, so just context wise, but I understand what you're saying, but I suppose the view was, and in terms of that material, there could be options which still provide some texture and still provide some natural lighting. I understand that as well. And as I said, it's our view that not putting them in also enables the landscaping to be more visible, particularly the trees that are growing. But I suppose I'll leave it to Kevin to decide whether, or to discuss whether there's a possibility of any.
So I suppose in short, yes, we can consider things, and we have been working with towns to comply compliance team, you know, very regularly, saying post completion. So yes, we can certainly consider something else.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions of the presenters?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Randolph, are you comfortable? No further questions?
I just had one question to the landscape architect just to confirm that the Boston ivy is in fact deciduous. Is that correct? So for how many months of the year will the wall be blank?
I guess that's the reason we planted both. So the creeping fig, which is evergreen. So the idea is the creeping fig basically forms the evergreen backdrop, and then the Boston ivy provides seasonal colour. So basically, from about June, it starts to lose its foliage, goes a deep red colour, and then for about 3 months of the year, it's basically just a filigree of tendrils, and the idea is that the creeping fig basically forms the backdrop, and in the spring, in September, the new foliage of the Boston ivy appears as a really bright green, apple green colour, and then obviously persists right through the summer into the next autumn.
Okay, thank you. And you said that the Boston ivy takes 2 summers, but the creeping fig takes a lot longer.
It's slow growing. It'll take about 5 seasons to get up to that first floor level height.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further questions to the presenters, we'll refer to the officers at the town of Cambridge. We have, I think, Ms. Gabriella Butson and Mr. Stephen Lamming available to answer our questions. I'll start again on screen. Panel member Councillor Randolph, do you have any questions of the officers? No. Okay, thank you. In the row here, do panel members have questions of the officers?
Yes, I have some questions.
Thank you.
My questions are essentially similar questions that I've had from the applicant. The RA provides a fairly long and unusual set of information for us. A number of those, as probably everybody are aware, some of those are not within our remit. Obviously, there's a number of matters that are the responsibility of the local government, not for us to make a determination on. I suppose my questions relate to what actions, what discussions have occurred in relation to the areas that are the subject of this application in relation to the alternates for exterior treatments. And I am conscious that there's been this ongoing conversation about communication with the city officers. So I'd be interested in hearing your comments about it's not the compliance matters, it's your comments around the planning merits of these variations, particularly in the context of comments that appear in the RA to have been already made on some of these requested design changes. I'm specifically referring to the ones I've spoken today to the applicant.
Sorry, panel member, do you mean before the Form 2 was submitted or since then?
I'm talking about through the whole process since construction. And what I'm trying to get at is a clarity of understanding about the planning merits of these matters, particularly around the exterior design treatments of the fluted concrete panels and alternates in terms of exterior treatment.
Sure. Yeah, as laid out in the RAR, the town recommends that the 7 changes to the east and western elevations are not approved, as our position is that those changes do not appropriately mitigate the building bulk impact on the adjoining rear residential properties, and they result in the development having a reduced overall quality and presentation to the rear properties and to the streetscape. I'll just note here that when the building permit was issued, the town staff considered each departure from the approved plans in isolation, as it appears, and they found that each departure was minor and was development exempt from requiring approval. At that time, town was following the status quo in the entire planning industry, where the general process was to only require an application to amend a previous approval if a departure resulted in a new variation to a deemed to comply provision or a further variation. As the town staff found that each individual departure did not result in a variation to a deemed to comply provision, they waived it through as exempt development. But since then, we have learned that this is not the correct application of the deemed provisions, and that the town did not legally have the power to exempt those changes from the previous approval. As set out in the RAR, the Supreme Court made a decision on Baker Investments in 2017, and that provided a precedent interpretation of the correct application of the deemed provisions. What the court found was that when the deemed provisions are considered wholly, the exemptions under Clause 61, they don't apply to changes from a previous approval. And the only way to deal with changes to a previous approval is via an application to amend the previous approval, which is why the Form 2 was submitted. The town's received 2 sets of legal advice on this matter, which have confirmed the court's precedent interpretation. I'll just point out that the Supreme Court's interpretation does make a lot of sense in this instance, because the original application for this childcare development went through an arduous assessment process, which included several reviews by the town's design review panel. And the town's recommendation to the JDAP at that time took the entire development into consideration. We considered all the elements comprehensively, which included the extent and quality of the materials, finishes, and landscaping features to the eastern and western elevations. And when the JDAP made its decision to approve the application, the JDAP also took the DRP's comments and the town's assessment of the entire development, including all features, into its consideration. So when the town's officers waived the changes through its exempt development, the town did not go through the same comprehensive assessment of the entire development that it undertook through the original application process. In waiving those changes through, the town staff did not appropriately consider if the changes, both in isolation and cumulatively, resulted in any adverse impacts on the adjoining properties or the streetscape. So this is why the Supreme Court's interpretation makes sense. So while the town acknowledges that the 7 changes to the eastern and western elevations were previously considered by the town staff, that was not the correct legal process. And now that we've done a full assessment, our position is that the changes, that they're not appropriate. They don't appropriately address the streetscape or the adjoining properties.
Thank you. I don't have any, I suppose, issue with your analysis and commentary regarding the legal merits. From my perspective, the information in the applicant's submission indicates that they agreed that an application, I think it's in point 25 of one of their comments, that they accepted that the DAP required a Form 2. I don't, from my perspective, except from the information you've provided and from including the comments from the applicant, that a Form 2 is why we're here. So I don't have any comments in relation to that. My comments are specifically in relation to the planning merits of the design changes, not whether or not those design changes required an application. From my perspective, that matter has been resolved because we have the application before us to make a determination. And as I've already said, the applicant themselves have accepted and agreed that an application was required. So I'm mainly interested in your comments, and you did refer earlier to a series of individual changes that were considered individually acceptable, but cumulatively not. And I'm interested in your planning merit considerations of particularly the concrete panels and your expectation of what should occur from a planning perspective in relation to the exterior treatments to address the amenity matters, and that is in the context of some, and I'll refer to as technical construction panels of replacing like for like, what is your planning merit expectations for resolution of those exterior changes, facade changes, amenity?
Well, on the eastern side, where our position is that even if they don't use the original materials that were approved in the original application, they could use a lighter weight material to achieve a similar outcome. The town's DRP, they consider that those panels were essential to improve the overall appearance of the development as it presents to Northwood Street. Regarding the elements removed on the western elevation, they were integral to the DRPs and the town's consideration of the development as it presents to the residential properties, because this development is in a mixed-use zone that borders with the residential zone. And the intention is that the rear of the building has a softened impact and presents appropriately to the rear because it's presenting specifically to residential property. So all those design features, they were considered to be important to really soften the impact of the building in the context, particularly because the previous application was approved with a reduced rear setback. And the town's original planning argument in the original RAR, we emphasised that rear setback should only be supported on the basis that all those design elements are included in that rear elevation. So in isolation, one by one, I don't think the town considered that previously through the building permit stage, but now that we've done that assessment as part of this Form 2, cumulatively, the removal of all those elements does not mitigate the bulk impact that reduced rear setback is having on those rear properties. So that's why our recommendation is to approve all the other changes, but require those elements to be reinstated.
Thank you. My next question, the applicants, as you heard in conversation today, referred to a second rationale for not introducing a design element in a replacement of those fluted, and that was for natural light. Do you have into the facility, and they referred to that matter today. Do you have any comments in relation to that in the context of the planning framework in terms of natural light for this proposal?
So
do you agree with their comments?
So sorry, I was just having a quick discussion internally. Well, there's only 7 flutes, and they don't consist of a significant portion of the front of the building. Our general view is that it won't have a big impact on natural light access.
Thank you. I've got another question. Sorry, can I
Yes,
continue?
please
Sorry,
do.
member.
Please
Sorry. My next comments relate to noise. There's been a lot discussed about noise. There's a lot in the documents we received, the submissions that we've received. I've also asked questions of the applicant regarding acoustic. And also I note that compliance is not a matter for us to deal with. That's beyond our remit. Can you provide any further commentary in relation to the same, basically it's a similar question as asked from the applicant, the acoustic report associated with the measures requested? Have you got any comments related to that? They have indicated there's been a series of conversations with the council officers in relation to changes, particularly around some of the noise coming out of the building and the associated treatments. Do you have any comments about that?
Yes, I do, panel member. Regarding the acoustic issues, the town has been working with the applicant to resolve these issues over the past 12 months or so. As a result of those discussions, the applicant provided the noise management plan, which reduced the number of children playing on the western balconies at any one time and limits the extent of music played on the western balconies to 1 hour per day, which is in accordance with the noise regulations. If the childcare does not operate in accordance with the noise management plan, that would be a compliance matter that the town would pursue. The town has requested on-site access to the neighbouring property to take independent noise measurements, but not been granted access. So at this stage, the town, we don't have an updated acoustic report from the applicant demonstrating that the development meets the noise regulations. We also don't have any independent noise readings demonstrating that the development doesn't meet the noise regs. Because of this, acoustic concerns, it's an ongoing matter that the town can continue to investigate. Until we have either an updated acoustic report or independent noise measurements, we don't have any solid evidence either way. If it is confirmed that the development does not meet the noise regs, the development will either need to change physical and or operational aspects to be compliant with the noise regs, and this would be regardless of whichever decision the JDAP makes today.
Thank you. So my summary, and you can correct me if my summary is too brief. At this juncture, the town officers have investigated, taken action where required, and has no current documented information that would lead to you taking either not necessarily any further action, because that, as you've already correctly indicated, is in your remit, any recommendations for modification to those elements as part of our consideration today.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to follow up and perhaps ask a similar question in a slightly different way. And the matters that you're recommending could be approved include things like the glazed balustrade, which is fitted above the level of the balcony. There's obviously a gap below that. To what extent are you satisfied that that's consistent with previous plans and previous acoustic reporting, etc.? And the extent to which other aspects, including landscape, might have influenced some of that softening of noise transmission, etc. Have you looked at these things that you're suggesting could be approved in the context of the previous acoustic reporting, and are you satisfied that they still meet with those recommendations, or is further reporting required?
Just specifically about the balustrade, that in the original acoustic report, the noise assessor, they included a comment that the noise measurements, the noise modelling from the balconies did not include the balustrading. There's a comment in there that they said that they haven't included that. So that wasn't included in their assessment of the noise modelling from the balconies. So if that's the case, then any balustrading would be a bonus. It would actually limit noise travel from the balconies more than what they've assessed.
And in terms of the aspects of the I think it's the doors and so on and so forth, are you comfortable that they deal with the same matter with the acoustics, the changing of the paving in the car park, the changing of the paving at the interface? Are you comfortable that they don't create other conditions of noise transmission?
Yeah, they weren't considered in the original acoustic report, floor materials or finishes. It was just to do with the garage, or the garage being solid, which indicated that the garage door was also solid. The acoustic report notes that the car parking area is enclosed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed that the solid wall instead of the window in the year 4 toilet is not part of your proposed set of approved things. But I couldn't see anywhere in the RAR where you commented as to why that should be the case.
All internal changes, they were considered to be acceptable because they weren't dealing with impacts on neighbouring properties or the streetscape, which is really what we're attempting to deal with through this Form 2 application.
Yeah, but I see. So you don't regard that change to need and to have an approval.
No.
Right. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you. Any other questions of the officers? Mr. Syme.
Can you just clear up something for me? In the RAR regarding landscaping generally on the eastern and western elevations, you've got a little paragraph there which says that discussions with George and the town regarding landscaping had not concluded and no final approval or endorsement was issued by the town for landscaping that has been provided. We have from Mr. Simpson an email from one of your officers which said that the landscaping plans have been approved. So can you just clear up for me, what are you referring to in that clause? Does that mean that the city is happy with the plans but has not signed up to have been actually executed? Where are we with that?
So just on the attachment that Mr. Simpson included with his presentation notes, that correspondence was with the previous officer that's no longer at the town, and we didn't have access to that email trail. But as we can see in the correspondence, the town had confirmed that the plan was endorsed. But the applicant since then, I think it was about 6 months later, contacted the town to advise the town that the landscaping had been installed. But shortly after, the Form 2 application was submitted, so there has been no on-site clearance of the landscaping.
So what can we take from that? Can we take that, given that the town has actually written to the applicant accepting the plans of the landscaping, that as long as they're executed in that way, then it's a matter of compliance with the plans as submitted and as it's seemingly approved by the town.
Well, as I pointed out, panel member, notwithstanding that the town's officers endorsed the changes to the landscaping, as per the Supreme Court's decision, the town didn't have the power to approve the changes. I'll also note that when the town endorsed the changes, it was not doing so under a comprehensive assessment of how the changes would cumulatively with the other material and quality changes on the western and eastern elevations result in the development adversely impacting the amenity of the neighbouring properties and streetscape. But this is why through the Form 2 process, the town's position has changed, and our position is that the landscaping changes on the balconies specifically, in combination with the other changes, that they're not appropriate. Sorry, my colleague wants to add a comment.
Good morning, panel members. The best the panel can do for the town is not to approve the landscaping as is and allow the town to achieve a better outcome on the landscaping that has been put in place at the moment.
Follow-up question, if I may, to yours, specifically on landscaping. My follow-up question is that we've had a reasonable amount of conversation specifically today regarding the landscaping, and there was some discussion regarding treatments and some clarification sought around the scale of those and the timeframes for achieving those. Do you have any further comments on that in the context of the concerns that you're raising about the facades?
Regarding I think it's the lemon tree that replaced a ficus. I mean, that type of citrus tree does not grow to the same extent that a ficus does, so it's not going to achieve the same facade softening that the ficus would. Any other questions?
So I accept that won't achieve the same scale. There are some commentary provided in this material that, and again, your comments would be of value to me, that some of those changes are made because of the impact that treatment trees such as ficus have on infrastructure beyond the boundaries of the site. Do you have any comments about that and the information that we've been provided that changes were to provide trees of height, but also species that dealt with minimal disturbance of other structures or infrastructure.
The landscaping that you are particularly referring to is in relation to the trees on the ground floor. We actually don't have any concerns with the ground floor trees. We have concerns with the lack of greening on the two upper floors, particularly on the western side, and by not allowing the landscaping to be approved as part of these changes will allow the town to continue to have the conversation and ultimately hopefully get an outcome over a longer period of time that more closely relates to what was originally approved.
Thank you for that. I have a follow-up question, but
Yes.
not to the officers.
You would like to refer
Yes.
to the applicant? Yes, of course, please do.
I would like to refer to applicants, particularly landscape architect Andrew Bayswater. Sorry, I apologise for my poor pronunciation. Could you please, and you may need with the assistance of the DAP support, the plans in front of you, can you please provide some further commentary about treatments on the boundary, the landscaping treatments for that boundary? I would like some clarification.
I think,
No, on the
I
upper
think
level.
at the upper levels.
Upper levels,
yes,
not the ground levels.
leave it
What would have been on structure or at the upper levels?
So we've got to get, that's fine. Thanks very much. Okay, so this is okay, so this is level one, so above ground level.
Yep.
So on Northwood Street, there's essentially two-story void. So within the plant there, originally we looked at having a ficus burrito, which actually is not like a normal thing. It's more of it's actually quite a slow and small growing thing. Fiddle leaf, commonly referred to. Then through the process, when we realised the actual scale of that two-story void, we then changed that species to a tuckaroo, which is a far larger growing tree. So in that space, it will optimally fill the two-story void within Northwood Street.
So this is the one marked as 808.
Yes, that's correct. I think so. Yeah. And that we felt was a much more suitable species. It's evergreen. It actually, from experience, grows really well in containerised situations. And we, in fact, we increased the size of the container through the process to get the best possible outcome for that tree. So in time, as I mentioned, that will grow to fill that two-story volume, so 6 metres, 6 or 7 metres.
Thank you.
I mean, sorry, just on the other levels, part of the brief was to actually include fruiting trees, so citrus and other tree species within planters on those at each depth, and that was a requirement of the briefing from the operator.
So on the western elevation, which is where all those trellises are, what are we going to actually see? I mean, you've taken trellises out and put wires in them. Where we are?
There are always, so basically there's a combination of columns and then with a supporting structure, and then shade sails basically fit in with that. So no, it's on that level as well.
So in time, where's your snake line? Your snake line is what you've got left as in terms of the trail. So how far does that extend? All those bits of green that you see on there, is that going to be snake line at some stage?
Ultimately. Yeah.
So in your view, the trellising, if you like, as as limited being provided by the state.
So combination, so with combination show sales, which were required from the compliance point of view, and then the snake line ultimately will basically give you that sort of cover.
Any questions of Mr. Barrows? At this point?
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions of the town sponsors from panel members? All right, thank you for those responses to questions. Let's move ahead and we have before us an officer's report.
I've got
Oh, you have one?
just a question. And
Who's
it's
this
either,
to?
I'm not too sure actually.
What do you want to know?
There's a condition, sorry, one of the elements on the second floor, proposed planter boxes between the break and the balcony replaced with glass balustrading, which is not recommended by the city, by the town. Can somebody point out to me where that is and what that refers to? Maybe somebody from the town?
Sorry, are you referring to the cascading landscaping in the void?
I'm referring to, there's an item, and that's the question. There's an item which comes up in level 2, and it's in their list of requests. And level 2, second floor, and it's there in their proposal. It's item D1. Proposed planter boxes being the break between the balcony placed with glass balustrade. So,
Yes, that is the cascading landscaping, and by not approving the landscaping as it is, will allow the town to negotiate with the applicant to get to an outcome that may not be cascading landscaping, but something that is a little bit more palatable than what we have.
so is that referring to the glass balustrading or the planter boxes? What are you objecting to? The glass balustrading or the later planter box?
We under the landscaping condition on the discussion on the RAR, we are referring to the lack of the landscaping, including the lack of the cascading landscaping. Now, there has not been any opportunity to talk to the applicant to work out any alternatives at this point, because the Form 2 was submitted, and as part of the Form 2, the idea was to work out exactly what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and those matters not acceptable, which are the 7 that the town would like to see not being approved, would then be up for negotiation with the applicant again in terms of the compliance process.
So what, maybe to the applicant, what is there at the moment? Is that
at the moment, there is glass balustrading, and the cascading landscape has been omitted.
Balustrading on either side, and we omitted the landscape plantings because in the photos you'll see that the height of the balustrading is a certain height for child risk climbing, and then they also have safety requirements that put nettings there. So the functional and practical aspect of maintaining these plants is very, very difficult. So the concern that the operator had, we had, was if the planters were installed, we would actually achieve the trailing appearance that is shown in the DA. We formed a view that we wouldn't, and what we've done is we've deleted those planters, and on those 2 level 2 balconies facing Northwood Street, we've added additional trees. So original DA drawings show 2 pots with 2 trees in the corners. What we've done is we've also introduced 2 large pots with 2 trees.
and these are on the
Eastern balcony.
Yeah, okay, so it's essentially in the void and the back of the other.
okay, I understand. Thank you.
Not a problem. Let's move ahead. We do have at item 4 4.1, the responsible authority recommendation that the panel accepts this application as a Form 2, and further a recommendation to approve 14 items of the applicant's request for amendment, and further to advise the applicant that all other conditions of the previous approval continue to have effect. So in the first instance, I'm seeking a mover for that as the primary motion. Mr. Syme, thank you. Is that seconded?
I will second it for discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Lafronte. Mr. Syme, as moving, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, I'll say a few things. First of all, the building as it is now is possibly not as of an architectural masterpiece as was originally portrayed. However, it's there. It's not offensive, particularly. It could be better, but it's not offensive. I think that as to those 14 items which are listed in here, these are ones which have been assessed and are of the nature that, on advice from the city, would not fundamentally change the building itself, and would likely have formed an element which would likely have formed an element of an original building approval, and I think that's right. So I think that those 14, as they are, can be approved. I think the remainder of them, my inclination is actually to approve the rest. I think that the evidence that we have is that, particularly regarding the landscaping, the evidence that we have is that the applicant has made reasonable steps all through the process to get to have a landscaping outcome, which A, is a practical one, both from an operational point of view and from a practical horticultural point of view, and also achieves in the long term. I think it's unreasonable to expect landscaping to achieve things in the very short term. In the medium and longer term, achieves the sorts of outcomes which is intrinsic to the original approval. And I think that there's sufficient evidence we have, particularly from Mr. Baranowski today, that that is the case. So I would be inclined, and I would foreshadow an amended motion to actually approve the landscape, particularly on the basis that it's something that's been negotiated with the town, irrespective of whether the person was there or not before. The town at some stage has assessed this and said the plans as they are satisfactory. If you're a reasonable landowner, you say, thank you very much. All I need to do is to implement the plans the town has said they are. I think to go beyond that at this very late stage is unreasonable, totally unreasonable for any development, no matter what it is. There are some other elements in there which I would then discuss. The flutes, the concrete flutes themselves are the ones which then would be the big standout. They would be something which maybe could be negotiated. I do take the advice of the design review panel that there are some elements that may be able to be applied there. I must say, looking back at the original approval, none of this would happen if the sorts of clauses which we often see there would have been in place, which is to allow a landscaping plan to have some sort of variation to the satisfaction of the local government, and that would be a normal thing. That doesn't turn up in this particular set of conditions, and that's a bit of a bit as far as the problems here. I think in this case, though, for landscaping, as I say, I would foreshadow that I would be able to approve that on the basis that that those reasonable negotiations have occurred. I would be then open to thinking about there's some of the other relevant, particularly the western facade. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Syme. Mr. Dunton, seconder.
Thank you. I will speak to the motion on the table. I agree that a number of the changes that's been put forward in the recommendation are appropriate, and thank you to the officers for comment, the submitters and the applicant for your comments. I have some comments in relation to landscaping, and I note the city's concern or this town's concerns, although I am more comfortable having listened to the further details and the ability to further interrogate landscaping types and location of landscaping. A bit like the mover, I do have some reservations about the removal of the building articulation. I am specifically referring to the to materials that create articulation. I don't accept the applicant's comment that there are no solutions and that unfortunately it was built and there was an error. I acknowledge that it was built and there were some challenges in that space in terms of the design detail checking. However, I don't see that those are without solutions to ensure that the architectural treatments, particularly as it is seen from the exterior, cannot be included on the design. I also don't have any material in front of me that provides amenity information that though the inclusion of those design elements would substantially compromise the amenity of the operations. And I'm of the view that those things should continue to have effect. Those matters should continue to have effect. I don't have necessarily a objection to shade cloth. I don't necessarily agree with the rationale from the applicant, and I would want some substantiated evidence that the reasoning for it is specifically to meet regulation. I note that it talks about obligations. I am intrigued by that because we see many childcares that do not have full cover of shading over outdoor area, and so I would be interested in having clarity on that one. So I am inclined to leave those there as they are currently, but I do accept that there are alternates and treatments that could produce a full coverage of the play area, but I'm interested in getting how that impacts in terms of its design element to the exterior. Again, in terms of its treatment, I look at the plans that I've got before me and they are fairly brutal in terms of its aesthetic appeal in relation to those elements. And I'm of the opinion that there are some softening treatments. That doesn't mean the whole area couldn't be covered. It means that there are alternate treatments that could be provided, and the material in front of us does not provide that information for me to make a judgment on those. So again, I'm comfortable to leave those that will continue to have effect for some other conversations. As I say, the information in relation to landscaping, I'm satisfied that those have been covered and provided a greater clarity, and I acknowledge that the material in relation to the time frame for any planting will take some time, but those changes will provide some climbing landscaping that has been considered as part of the solution, and I think that is an appropriate treatment. I also acknowledge and thank the town officers for clarifying information regarding noise and noise management and the noise attenuation in the context of the changes that have been requested before us. I'm comfortable with recommending support for those modifications. And like the mover, I will in fact move amendment 1 for the minute taker. And my moving of the amendment is to deal with landscaping as requested by the applicant. They are contained, there are a number of them. There is western elevation, A, B, and C, and there is eastern elevation, first and second floor, A and B. And that is, I am moving that motion. I've already talked to it. If there is a seconder, that is the motion.
Mr. Syme. Thank you.
So are you taking that whole landscaping list from J, their proposal?
Yes, I am. Sorry. Yes.
Seconder. So that's the whole list marked J as part of their.
Yeah, in pages, I think it's page 4 and 5.
5 and 6.
Sorry, 5 and 6. I'm just getting back to the to clarify the pages for the minute taker.
Yes, I'll second.
Report back to it. So I'm satisfied that my rationale is that I'm satisfied with the changes to landscaping and that they are appropriate in the context of this development, and that has been clarified through the information that we've also been provided to today as part of the discussions that mature landscaping will take some time to achieve its heights, and that the information that we have received as part of that change is appropriate in the context of this development on this site, in this location and within its zoning, and I'm comfortable that that is suitable for the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Syme seconded that amending motion. Did you
Look,
wish to speak?
I've pretty much made my remarks regarding landscaping in my previous comments, so I don't think I need to say anything.
Okay, on the amending motion, did anybody else wish to make a comment? No. Okay. Let's put the amending motion 1 to the vote. Those in favour of that amending motion? That's Mr. Fontaine and Mr. Syme. Those against? That's Barlow and Radcliffe. So that is not, that's lost. Substantive remains as we have heard before the RAR at present. Still with you, Mr. Fontaine, did you have more that you wish to?
Yes. I have the following comments I have in relation to the proposal. Have given due regard to the RAR comment on the material. I've also considered DAP regulations in relation to whether it is. There's two questions in relation to this for me. One, does it meet the threshold question? So that's essentially a legal question as written in the DAP regulations, and that is, can we deal with it? My view is based on the material that we've received. Yes, we can. Therefore, it can be considered as a Form 2 application. And my consideration, which is a merit-based planning consideration, which is the second limb of the matters, is those that are listed as part of the recommendation move are acceptable and supportable. I won't repeat the material that has been already given. From my perspective, those changes are appropriate in the context, and I agree with comments provided in the RAR. I've already made some comments about matters that I have not brought into the recommendation and will continue to have effect. All right. That's it. Sorry, yes, that closes.
Very good. Would anybody else like to speak against or for the substantive motion? Councillor Barlow. Panel member Councillor Radcliffe, would you like to speak about this substantive motion?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. I'll make some comments. I have referred back to the original application, although I wasn't party to that. And I can see that some of the residents' concerns stem from that. and associated with the original configuration and organisation of the development, but that is what we have at this point. I'd also like to comment that a lot of the drawings that we have at a planning stage are for that planning purpose. They're not engineering or construction drawings, and so we do always anticipate that they go through design development stage leading up to building permit and occupation. Obviously, there has been some issue in terms of communication, both within the town and also between the proponents team, and a number of the issues associated, generally speaking, with noise, light spill, etc. They're matters for regulations beyond this DAP panel, and the compliance with those rests with the town. So all we can consider really are the matters associated with that original planning decision, and the impacts that the changes have within that decision and the planning framework. I think the DRP's review of the alterations is very helpful, but for the most part, that's considering the proposed form from an aesthetic, particularly when viewed from the public realm. I think there's still some concerns regarding materiality and colour, and particularly the landscape quality. I, like the seconder, do not accept the argument that there were costs and shortage of labour, etc. I still think that there is work to be done in that respect, and obviously those matters which are not recommended for approval at this point, I would anticipate that the town and the applicant would work closely together to ensure that there is greater stress on materiality, colour, texture, particularly at the interface with residential development in the public realm. Likewise, and one of the reasons that I did not support the amending motion is that I think there's still some work that can be done in terms of the landscape, accepting the landscape architect's position on how quickly things will grow and the appropriateness of species. That's his expertise. But I think some of those things that have been missed out can still be considered in order to soften the appearance. Particularly, I would be interested to see some innovation along the balcony, etc., which I think is important from an interface point of view. So I believe that a number of those finishes, textures, and landscape should be reconsidered, potentially pulling in the chair of the DRP to assist in some of those negotiations if they prove to be difficult to this point. I have some concern around the frosted glazed balcony, but I understand the construction process for that. And I would, whilst not part of this decision, but I would urge the town to continue its investigations in terms of noise and light spill and glare and so on and so forth, which seem to have caused a number of issues for surrounding residents. As I say, it's not for us, but certainly appreciate that the town has those matters in hand and ongoing. So with that, I'm comfortable to support the RAR recommendation for those 14 points before us, and I will leave it there. Did any other panel member wish to speak at this point? And I guess any questions decide to close out.
Also, just so we're not back in here at some stage with some parallel discussion, I'd like to add a clause to a phrase to the end of condition 3.
Amending motion 2.
Motion 2. Which would be to add the words unless otherwise approved in consultation, unless otherwise approved in consultation with the city.
It's usually to the
satisfaction of the city,
yeah,
the town.
of the town, yes.
do you need to put the whole thing?
Unless,
So at the moment, it reads, Mr. Simon advised the applicant to accept the elements listed by the development must strictly be in accordance with the previously approved plans, etc., with all conditions of the previous approval continuing to have effect, comma, unless otherwise approved to the satisfaction of the city.
The town of Cambridge.
To the town of Cambridge. Sorry, I'm elevating the town.
the intent here is to not have us come back here again with a list of minor variations which add up to a major list. I think it's important that these.
I'm happy to second that.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry, apologies. It's important that these matters, I think it's appropriate that these matters get resolved across the desk and not in that process. And I think they probably can be. So
Thank you. I'm happy to second that. I don't think I need to provide any further comment. Anybody else have any comment on that amending motion? Let's just check all those in favour of that as the amending motion. Those in favour?
Oh.
Still online, but no camera.
So Rancliffe, we've lost visuals on you. Can you still hear us?
Definitely lost.
We can just note her on the minutes.
We can continue.
Yeah, just continue.
She's left at 11:13. So we were just back to that amending motion, which amends condition 3. It's been moved and seconded. We've added a sentence. Those in favour, I will certainly do that again. Yes. So it would read: advise the applicant that except for the elements listed above, the development must strictly be in accordance with the previously approved plans, reference DAP 20, etc., stamped approved 2nd of March 2021. With all conditions of the previous approval continuing to have effect, we now introduce the words unless otherwise approved to the satisfaction of the town.
unless otherwise clearly, unless the satisfaction.
I'm happy to the language.
Thank you. So just on that amendment, those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Back to you, Mr. Simon, to close out.
Thank you. Yes, look, I just briefly reinforce the comments that made. There are only certain things that panel can do. There is a lot of things that the town in operation is obliged to do, and they are things like monitor noise complaints, look at the issues of lights, floor, and so on. I think it is also there, maybe through this process, something that has been now been more clear to the operator, because they might think so they are things which we can only flag. We can't do much to at this stage. It is something that the town has a responsibility to and should do.
Thank you. So with that, let us vote on that motion as amended. Those in favour? That's unanimously carried. Thank you very much. We thank the applicant and other presenters for attending, and thank you, Councillor Barlow. Still here is Councillor Radcliffe. Thank you very much too. That draws the end of the 11 of agenda part B. Let us resume the meeting at 11:20. Pardon me, it's just clicked over. Panel members for this part of the agenda, part C, the City of Bayswater, is myself, Karen Hyde as presiding member, Ms. Francesca Laconte as deputy presiding member, Mr. John Syme as specialist member, and on screen we have panel member Mayor Philomena Pivarati and Councillor Joshua Gibson from the town of Bayswater. Welcome, and apologies for the late starting. The previous matter was quite complex. So yes, Mayor Pivarati.
Thank you, presiding member. I just have a question. This meeting was scheduled until 11:30. That's the invite that I received from the Secretariat. As you would understand, I have made myself available until 11:30. However, I do have other commitments after that time. So given the lateness, my question is, what does the panel intend, if you intend to proceed with this now, or will we be adjourning at 11:30?
No, we will be proceeding with this, Mayor Preferati. So if you do need to leave at 11:30, that's really what you have to do. I mean, we will still have a quorum for the meeting, and understand that in your position you do have a lot on your plate. Unavoidable, I'm afraid, from our point of view. As I say, the previous element went for a long time. We don't have a great deal of control over some of those issues.
So can I just ask, is there no provision for the meeting to be adjourned, just because this is a particular item that I would like to be involved in, and I have made myself available for the allotted time? I'm just wondering if there is provision within the standing orders to adjourn a meeting, because there hasn't been enough notice for like a deputy to attend on my behalf. I'm just, I'm not very comfortable that I've been available for the time allotted, and that now it's going over time and I won't have the opportunity to participate in this meeting.
Yes, we could see how the other panel members feel about that through a procedural motion. Did you have a time later today when you would be available, or would that is it sort of like you've got a half an hour thing happening at 11:30, or are you gone for the whole day?
As you can imagine, my calendar fills up quite in advance, and today and tomorrow my calendars, I mean, I'm just having a look now. I literally
let me put it to let me see in terms of a procedural motion. I would say that we do have all of the applicants, etc., in the room, but is there a mover for a procedural motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mayor Preferati. Is there a seconder for that? Unfortunately, there is not. So that I'm afraid does lapse. So on that basis, I'm afraid, and under the standing orders, we would continue with the meeting. We do have a quorum. I think potentially the lesson that we learned from this is that we should allow perhaps longer time slots for meetings where we've got a couple of agenda items, but that's all we can do, I'm afraid. So when you need to go, feel free to go. We'll note that you've commenced attending, and that then when you have to go, you have to go. So we'll move ahead and welcome everybody to the meeting. We've already started that meeting. Could I just check for declarations of due consideration there? Can all panel members given due consideration? Can I have a show of hands, please? Yes, thank you. That's unanimous from everybody. I've not received any disclosures of interest. Was the matter considered could I ask the elected members? Have you seen this previously? No, not before a previous council. Okay, therefore there are no disclosures of interest. So moving ahead, we will invite the presenters forward. Just note that we have limited the presentations in according to standing orders to 3 minutes. We have 2 requests, one from Mr. Alessandro Stagno from Apex Planning, and the second from Mr. Benham Boardval from Transcorp. And I believe that one of you has a PowerPoint. I think that's Mr. Wardwell. Which of you wishes to start? Do you have the PowerPoint?
Yes, Presiding Member.
Okay.
Both Mr. Bulgar and I will speak to the slides, so we can make the joint presentation within 6 minutes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
We've also got technology lines and not in the clerk and try to sign about will answer questions.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So when you're ready.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Presiding Member. Good morning, panel members. I'm the applicant of the Early Learning Centre proposed at 183 and 185 Bernard Road in Miranda. As already noted, I've got Mr. Bulgar, the project traffic engineer with me. We'll talk about the site accreditation. We've also got Tim Owens, David Holmes, and Dr. Clark Design available to answer questions that are both instrumental in designing the facility. The application is recommended for approval by the City of Bayswater. Their recommendation is underpinned by a very thorough assessment of the applicable town planning instruments, and the RAR sets out clear and sound reasons why this development is worthy of approval. The design has also been through the city's design review process and has achieved the support of the city's design review panel following 3 meetings and a final chair review. The conditions recommended by the city are mostly acceptable, though we are respectfully requesting that condition 11 be modified and condition 24 be deleted, which we will address later in this presentation. The development site is well positioned to deliver early learning services to local families, and its location reaps the benefit of a number of factors. These include a frontage to Bernard Road, which is a key transport route for the area. It is used by local families on their daily commute, creating significant opportunities for passing trips on the way to school or work. There's a direct walkable connection to the Miranda train station by the footpath of Bernard Road, providing parents and staff with opportunities for expanded transport options. Being a corner location with only 2 sensitive boundary interfaces to the north and to the east, and also adjacent to a local park to the west, which reduces the risk of adverse amenity impact with the right layout and design. The residential area to the north and east of the site forms part of the Miranda Station precinct, and as outlined in the RAR, is slated for intensification with an estimated yield of an additional 2,000 dwellings in the future, as per the draft local planning strategy prepared by the city. The location of the site is appropriate for childcare, and we believe it's a good example of how childcare can act as a transitional use to an emerging train station precinct. The site layout and design has been executed in a way which closely considers the site surroundings. The layout intuitively achieves a number of desirable outcomes, which include providing a car park within the northern half of the site, which reduces impact to the neighbours to the north and east, locating the building centrally where it addresses the street frontages and also screens the car park, positioning the playscapes along street frontages where the potential for noise impact to neighbours is the lowest, and creating a level of interactivity with the street through open style and permanent fencing. The development provides significant landscaping which exceeds the minimum requirements at around 14.5% of the total site area, and will also plant at least 14 trees throughout the car park and the playscapes, which will improve the streetscape response and provide natural shading for the children. Traffic impacts has been comprehensively considered and addressed, and the level of assessment undertaken has gone beyond the minimum with an intersection capacity analysis for Bernard Road and Della Road, which demonstrates the best level of service and no queuing or congestion during peak periods. The provision of 28 parking spaces to service the facility has been demonstrated to be acceptable both through our materials and in the city's RAR, and capable of meeting the needs of the facility. We're requesting the modification of Condition 11 and Advice Note 1, which relate to quote-unquote upgrades to the intersection of Bernard Road and Della Road. We have concerns that the current wording of Condition 11 is ambiguous and lacks certainty, as it references upgrades but does not specify what the upgrades should be, which can lead to issues at the detailed design phase of the development. We understand from the RAR that the city's intention is for a seagull island to be installed within the intersection to improve right turn movements. However, it's evident from looking at the report that this is not based on impacts from the development, but rather from the existing crash history over the last 5 years. Initial estimates indicate that the installation of the seagull island could cost well in excess of $100,000, and it's our position that this is not reasonable to impose an upgrade of this magnitude on this development based on those circumstances. Mr. Bulgar has reviewed the issue and can talk to what we believe to be a reasonable compromise.
Thank you. At the outset, I would like to concur the earlier comments by Alessandro about the thorough assessment of this application by city officers, and the issue with regard to Condition 11 and Advice Note 1, which creates uncertainty for the applicant. Now,
the assessment that we have undertaken and as well as the assessment that city offices have undertaken has demonstrated that there is no capacity, there is no operational issues at the intersection. And there won't be also with the addition of the childcare center traffic. There has been 5 crashes at the intersection over the last 5 years, and in my view, as a senior road safety auditor, those crashes do not particularly raise an alarm with me, because there are 1 crashes per year on average, and you expect that at an intersection like that. 3 of those crashes are right angle crashes, and the city's recommendation for a Seagull Island is not to particularly address safety and those crashes, but it is to provide better clarity once vehicles are using the opening gap in the center median. Of course, one option of achieving that is the Seagull Island, and Alessandro mentioned in our view, it is an expensive option, a disruptive option for a circumstance where the number of traffic volumes is not significant at all. There is alternative means of achieving the same objective that city has, and instead of physical Seagull Island, is provide a painted island in the middle, and that way the implementation is going to be very efficient, very quick. We don't have to look at drainage issues which are unknown. The moment we put islands in the middle of the road, potentially could impact drainage flows. So we believe that the simple suggestion, which is partly obscured on that screen, but I'm sure you have seen it, will also achieve city's objective, and we respectfully request that the amendment to condition 11 reflects what proposal you see on your screen.
You're at times.
Thank you.
To sort of draw to a close.
Thank you. And finally, I think then advice note 1 becomes irrelevant and needs to be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll just quickly wrap up with the proposed deletion of condition 24. We're requesting this condition be deleted on the basis that it doesn't appear to be directly relevant to a childcare use in the context of this particular site. A reading of the condition appears to be more relevant to a retail or food and beverage use in a town centre context, which would have nil setbacks and openings directly fronting the street. In this case, we've got a childcare facility in a residential context where the windows, doors, and openings are set well back from the street. The drawings before the panel that are on this slide, which is partially obscured, show that an appropriate level of street engagement will be achieved through the entry piazza and the place gates which face the street frontages. And these all have permeable gates and permeable fencing, which will enable surveillance and interactivity. To eliminate the potential for unintended consequences or potential for misinterpretation of the condition, it's our respectful request that condition 24 be deleted as essentially unnecessary. Panel members, that concludes our presentation. We respectfully request the application be approved with the proposed modifications to condition 11 and the deletion of condition 24. And of course, our team will have to respond to any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Do we still have Mayor Karate online? Yes, okay, lovely. Did you have questions of the applicant, please? Over to you, Mayor Karati. No questions. Councillor Evson, did you have questions of the applicant? Okay, the panel members in the room here have questions of the applicant?
Yes, I have one. Sorry, to Benham. Sorry.
That's okay.
In your information, your detailed information, you talked about the traffic modelling, and you attached, as part of your calculations, you attached traffic volumes or traffic movements. I think it was 30% from the east and 70% from the west. And I think the conclusions were based on the residential catchment areas. Is that a standard method of undertaking that determination?
Generally, yes, because the patronage to the childcare centre would be largely from residential areas, and that therefore the most appropriate way to estimate that patronage pattern is through the review of the residential catchment.
Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Mr. Simon, you have a question?
Oh, just a quick one. I think what the issue with the crossover there, no, crossover intersection. What additional load goes on the intersection as a result of this development compared to what's already?
Sure. Sure. The same document that we referred to earlier in figure 4 of our original TIS report, those additional volumes are quantified. So through the center of the median, in the morning, we have 13 vehicles turning right, and in the afternoon, we have 9 vehicles turning right, and turning right out through the center of the intersection. In the morning, and afternoon, we have 19 vehicles per hour. So those are the peak during the peak drop-off pick-up time, and of course, as we know, childcare center similar to school times outside the peak time. There is virtually no activity at all.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Otherwise, we'll refer to the town officers. We have officers Ms. Gemma Bayswater and Ms. Helen Smith, and we have somebody else in the room as well. Would the panel members have any questions of the town's officers? Mayor Pivarati, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, presiding member. I just have a few questions for the officers. So firstly, just a few little things I just wanted to fix up for the record. Just on page 21, I believe, when the report talks about the city's transport infrastructure manager also reviewed the Naranda Station traffic impact assessment, which did not initially propose signalisation of the station access on Naranda Avenue. That's confusing to me because I think there's a mistake there in terms of the street that you're referring to. Can I just get that clarified, please? I don't believe that's Naranda Avenue.
We're not hearing the city officers at the moment. Are you on?
Sorry, I just had to turn off mute. Yes, Madam Mayor, I do apologise. We do apologise for that mistake. That should state that no signalisation to the access on Binara Road.
Thank you. And just for clarity, again, to ensure that the records are correct, figure 1 on page 8, where you've got the aerial location of subject site, your figure indicates Crimea Street in the wrong location. Can you just confirm that that is the wrong location?
That is correct. That might have been the way the image was drawn. Crimea Street should be the next street down from the subject side, the next vertical street.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for bringing that up, but I just want to make sure everything's correct for recorded correctly. So I'll just move on to some more questions. Under the officer's comments on page 9, the reasons you've listed in response to the community, on page 9, I'll just get to that. So when there was the issue raised of land use appropriateness, and they drew similarities to the childcare application on Morley Drive, your response to that was that each development application is assessed on individual merit, and then you stated, the Morley Childcare Centre proposal was for a larger centre. It was closer to residential properties and all that. I just wanted to know which one of those reasons were actually listed in the SAT determination that rejected that proposal, because my understanding was it was just in relation to the centre being isolated from non-residential uses and therefore didn't meet that planning principle.
So the reasons for refusal included access being from Morley Drive, that didn't comply with the policy. It also included reasons about the design of the centre, the position of the car park, and also in relation to the isolation from residential areas.
Okay, thank you. Also, my next question is about the background on page 7. When you talk about the subject site is within its, the subject site and lots within its immediate vicinity are zoned medium and high density residential with a density coding of R25 and local public open space. Is R25 considered high density?
That's considered medium density.
That's medium density. So on lot sizes of 700 square metres or up to 800 square metres, how many properties would R25 allow on that?
For a standard single house, two properties. That's
so
correct.
Okay.
800 square metres.
Okay, so it's definitely not high density in that area.
No, not high density.
Okay.
Not at this stage.
Okay. And then you also say on page 8 that the site for the childcare centre is within 400 metres of the Noranda train station and is partly in the Noranda station precinct as identified in the City of Bayswater draft local planning strategy. With this precinct identified as a long-term priority. So when is this draft LPS intended to be no longer a draft LPS?
If I understand, the LPS has been advertised for public consultation, and it is something we call or consider a seriously entertained planning document. I understand that has it been submitted to WAPC? Yes, it has been submitted to the Western Australian Planning Commission for endorsement, and we're waiting for that endorsement. I can't advise to the timeframes on that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And my next question is the RAR notes the amount of submissions received in opposition and support of this development. Just a question is, how many childcare developments have we received that have received a similar amount of submissions opposing it?
And that would have been Morley. But yeah, probably I think the Morley Childcare Centre, and that didn't have as many submissions.
The Morley Childcare Centre, you're talking about the one on Morley Drive that we referenced earlier?
That's correct.
I believe that had 14.
That's correct.
This has got over 70. Yep.
88 submissions to be exact, yes.
Okay. And just one last question. Where is the closest, like in terms of distance, the next closest commercial use?
Around a shopping centre.
And that's nowhere near the Noranda train station, yeah?
No.
No, okay. That's all my questions for now. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ebson, whilst you're on screen, did you have questions of your officers? No. Okay. Panel members, any questions of officers at this point?
Yes,
Mr. Simon?
Yeah, just the commentary on the two amendments that the require amendment to condition 11 and deletion of condition 24. Can you comment on those? And comment on those. And I suppose we're talking about condition 11, whether the alternative which has been proposed by that would be satisfactory. The city.
You're asking for, sorry, we couldn't hear you. With respect to condition 11, sorry, firstly, Gemma, I'm going to answer partly on this. I've also got Fatima Al-Ghanamiao from engineering who will provide some further commentary. The city considers an upgrade to the intersection is warranted to respond to traffic volumes generated by the subject DA and the location of the centre at this particular intersection. The intersection upgrades will assist with regulating the traffic movements, and this will improve traffic safety at the intersection with the increased traffic volumes from the subject development. The applicant seeks deletion of condition 11 and refers to providing a painted intersection as an alternative. The city opted to recommend condition 11 in the wording that it has to be open and flexible, so as to be able to consider multiple options and design for this intersection upgrade. Originally, the wording of our condition was quite prescriptive and referenced that seagull intersection. So we thought we were being slightly proactive in the wording of our condition, but it appears it's actually caused some ambiguity. What we would suggest, because we are of the view that the intersection upgrade is required, we would suggest a rewording to condition 11 sorry, just bear with me, to specify the upgrade to the intersection to include a curbed island in a seagull configuration. And that would seem to align with what Transcore is recommending in terms of the design, being a painted triangle. We're simply asking for a curved triangle to provide for that additional safety. And we do consider that the associated advice note 11 advice note 1 in relation to condition 11 is warranted, and we consider that actually provides for more flexibility for alternative design options to be contemplated and agreed to between the applicant and the city of Bayswater. Did you have anything further you need?
So full curved one, a full curved solution is a long way away from painted one, though, isn't it, in terms of cost and you know, drainage issues and those sorts of things.
Was that a question?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I mean, the applicant is looking for a painted solution, which seems to me to be a fairly straightforward and inexpensive way of doing it. You are asking for a full curb solution, which I think is what they're specifically not wanting to do, because its cost itself is an unknown. Am I getting it right? You'd better explain what you are suggesting in terms of a curb solution. What would we see there?
So in terms of the curbed treatment, it will be more effective in terms of regulating the traffic movements within that immediate section. It will, cost-wise, it wouldn't be too significant of an increase in a cost because it's just purely the cost of the asphalting of that little island and the curbing around it. But in both scenarios, there will be a line marking component and traffic management component, and the majority of the cost would be associated with the traffic management component to close or partially close the road.
The benefit of the paved and curbed island is that it is a physical barrier, whereas the painted triangle or the painted intersection isn't. It's a visual barrier, but not a physical barrier. And with the accidents that have occurred at this intersection, a physical barrier is considered warranted.
So what does it look like physically? Is it just a bit of raised paving with a curve around it, or?
That's correct.
That's correct. Similar to sorry to interrupt, but similar to many other T intersection treatments, non-signalized T intersection treatments along the state, across the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just let's see if questions are finished. Have you finished with your question? Okay, it's still open question from Mr. Syme regarding condition 24, which the applicant was asked to be deleted.
Yes, look, the city is still wanting to retain that condition. It is a condition that we apply significantly to commercial community development such as this, and that we do apply to all childcare centres. The retention of an open and active frontage requirement relates to the doors and the windows. And what we're trying to restrict is seeing these covered fully or provided with obscure glazing such that there is no activation or that there is no surveillance provided from the building. And particularly in relation to that Della Road frontage where it is, the building is quite close to Della Road. We'd also like to protect the openness of the piazza or the entry plaza, sorry, and those windows and doors around that area. And hence we consider the condition is warranted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there questions of the officers at this point?
Yes, I have a question.
And if we need to refer back to the applicant, we can do that too.
Thank you. No, my question is
okay.
My question is a little bit of a follow-on from the first question. Could you talk? We're really talking here about condition 11 re treatment on road, whether it's physically raised or whether there's a treatment but it's painted. So essentially, as I understand, that's the conversation we're currently having. Can you talk about the need a nexus and how it relates specifically to this development in the context of the material that we have in our RA? I know there are a number of painted solutions in various locations that demarcate ability for turning. I've seen these in many areas occurring, as well as physical raising. What I'm trying to get clarity on is the rationale in this particular instance that raised treatment on road is required associated with this development. The RA comments refer to development or incidents that occurred outside of this development. Can you speak to the rationale of applying it to these works to this development based on the information we have of scale and traffic as provided in traffic movement and numbers as provided in the TIS?
Certainly. So sorry, that's the question to the city, yes? Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah. So the treatment is proposed or recommended as a way to future-proof the intersection as a result of the increased demand, utilizing that intersection to access the development. The Della Road does not provide any route run through to the rest of the network. There is no exit on the other side to the north of the development. So all vehicles will be entering and exiting via the intersection. And that will result in the increase of demand. So the island is just to regulate traffic and prevent any future or prevent the risk of future crash types that might result accordingly. Regardless of whether it's a painted island or not, I'd just like to highlight that both those treatments will require main roads approval. There is a line marking component required both. The city does not have delegated authority to approve or implement those treatments. It will have to go through main roads for a final endorsement, and it will require the line marking to be installed by their crew as well. So they will need to be brought in the picture. As far as the city is aware, the painted median in itself may not be approved unless there is justification that a physical median or physical island is not suitable for the site.
Okay. My follow-up specific is, thank you for that information. I note the RA says you did not refer this to any government agents or services. My question in the context of what you've just responded to is why not? Why not respond to main roads? Why not liaise with main roads or refer to main roads, given the comments that you've just raised about their involvement?
So Banara Road is not a road under the control of main roads. It's a road under the control and management of the City of Bayswater. As I understand, the line marking components of any road in anywhere in the state requires an approval from main roads. They're not advising through that process on the necessity of those road upgrades, particularly to the local roads. They're just advising and approving the actual line marking design, but their role, they don't have a role to play in advising on the suitability of a road traffic upgrade within a local road, as I understand. I think they would, yes. So that is the reason why it hasn't been referred to main roads, why this proposal has not been referred to main roads.
Thank you for that. I am still a little bit concerned or uncertain, is probably the better language, that on the one hand, your comments about not having any referral to main roads, but still main roads having the say. I acknowledge and note both of those. However, a change that requires an involvement with main roads at some capacity, and given that the comments of need are arising, I am curious as to why there wasn't consultation based on need, because there has to be some involvement of main roads. That's really my question.
So that's generally treated as a project stage. Once a design is prepared and submitted to main roads, that's when they start reviewing that and provide their commentary in terms of the line marking component. And that's purely what they look at in the perspective that whether it meets the current standards, the current requirements, but not in a matter to say whether it services a childcare centre or some sort of development, given that it's not impacting a state road in that aspect.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, thank you, John.
Yeah, just to follow up, given that crash history, is that seagull marking required now?
Not based on the current crash history and the crash types at that intersection.
So there's no agenda to do any intersection modification now?
At this stage, no.
I have a follow-up question. Do you think that this requirement, as the conditions currently worded, or the idea of a curbed treatment with paving or bitumen, whatever fills in that curbing, is proportionate to the amount of crossings that will occur at this intersection from this particular development? There's obviously people crossing at the moment. The development isn't there. So how have you assessed the nexus with this development?
It's purely based on the increased demand as a result of the development application and the risks that vehicles will try and accept a smaller gap in traffic to undertake the maneuvers, given that it's a 70k speed limit road that introduces a risk.
But going to
and that the development is occurring at peak times when
Correct.
all these vehicle movements or the predominance of the vehicle movements are at peak times when that intersection is at its busiest.
All right, thank you for that. I might refer to the applicant as a follow-up to that question. What's the proportionality between this development and the amount of turning that's anticipated in that location?
Thank you. First of all, I have got an example of what.
I don't think that will actually help because we've got two of the panel members on the screen, so we can't really share that, I'm afraid. But if you know the location, they might be familiar with it.
Unfortunately, I don't know the exact name of the road, but it's just down the road from here. I think there are a couple of elements to consider. The facts that the applicant and city agree with. Currently, the intersection works satisfactory with the highest level of service, and with the addition of the development traffic, the intersection continue to operate with the highest satisfactory, with the highest level of service. And so why is there that as part of the development, if the operational levels are not impacted in any significant way, why is there a need for development to introduce any sort of remedial measure? So if it's not related to traffic operations, it can only be related to safety. Again, the fact that city and the applicant agree with that this measure does not address the pattern of historical crashes that occurred at the intersection. The 5 crashes are intersection where 3 right angles before you even get to the center. So as you come out, there is a T-bone occurring immediately. There was a rear end crash on Bella, and there was a kind of a left turn with a rear end or side swap occurred. So all those crashes that has occurred were even before entering the gap in the median. So the proposed measure is not to address safety and the pattern of safety as we know it. And it is in the RAR. The only reason the city has requested it is to provide some guidance once vehicles traveling through the center of the median. The painted guidance is as good as the solid median guidance. Now, the other reasons that you pick any sort of curved island against a painted island is because of traffic volumes in circumstances. That's the reason in the regions when you do T intersection and right turn lane, etc., it's only painted, it's not curved because the numbers turning are not significant. Only when you have number of traffic volumes high, which are making turning movement, you introduce curved islands. In this instance, considering the numbers existing and with the addition of development traffic, our view is that nothing is warranted. However, the city would like to regulate traffic better through the center island, and a painted guidance provides exactly that. And there is no reason for us to go to the next level of a solid median, which, as I did mention, potentially introduces other aspects, mainly to widen the available gap in the median. We need to look at the drainage issues, as correctly was mentioned, that traffic management is significant. The painted one, you can do it in an hour overnight, whereas something like this, it's going to take much longer, and therefore it will significantly more disruption to traffic, cost, etc.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Any other questions of the officers? Yes.
I have two further questions. The first is still on traffic. Can you provide a comment about sight lines on that road? Are there any additional matters that we should be aware of in terms of turning either from Della or from Penara that we should be aware of in relation to visibility and sight lines?
Benara Road is a fairly straight stretch of road. There were, based on several site inspections, there were no sightline issues that were identified. There was a crest on Della Road, but that was a little bit further from the intersection.
Thank you. My second question has nothing to do with the sightlines. It is in relation to condition 24. And I am interested in further the commentary and the rationale for this, noting that the eastern elevation faces the adjoining property. I'm wanting to get some clarity about this concern. The information that I've got on plan here shows the elevation, the front elevation towards Della has windows and doors. The elevation towards Penara has also some windows and doors. What is the concern about that you are attempting to address through condition 24?
The commercial premise covering all windows, either with window shading, security devices, or internal glazing to the windows, and that not providing for interaction between the street and the building, and surveillance, and obviously then the crime prevention that can arise as a result of that activation and surveillance.
Thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you for that.
Can I follow up on that? What I'm wondering whether condition 24 is benign or not. I mean, what practical effect is it going to have? Because as the applicant said, we've got a residentially oriented building, if you like. It looks like a residential, it fits in within the residential environment very comfortably. What practical effect would condition 24 have? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, is it going to change the plans at all? Is it benign, or is it unnecessary?
It's not going to change the plans, but it's going to control the way the development is implemented and the way those openings, windows and door spaces that face the street are treated post-development.
Do we have records of childcare centres which cover their windows? Is that a common practice?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Just as a quick follow-up, I mean, would it be helpful to have an advice note that explained the intention of that condition? It's fairly open and vague, just to explain that the intention is to basically avoid obscuring glazed areas to maintain and optimize passive surveillance and activation.
I think an advice note would certainly provide some clarity, and the city would be supportive of such a suggestion.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions of the officers before we move to the item? Are we all done with questions to the applicant as well? Yes, let's move ahead then. So we have before us at item 3.1 recommendation for this application to approve subject to a number of conditions and advice notes. I'm seeking a move of these for that in the first instance. Mr. Hunter is mover. Do I have a seconder for that? I'm happy to second. The floor is yours as mover. Thank you.
Thank you. I have reviewed all the documentation we have received today and have listened to all of the comments. Thank you to all those who have participated. I am comfortable that the proposal is consistent with the planning framework, and I'm also comfortable that it's appropriate in its location and site context. The information provided in the RAR has been exceptionally helpful in terms of how it meets the framework, including the parking provisions and operation of the facility, meeting all the requirements of the city, and note its proximity to the new or the increasing development, public transport development. So from my perspective, this proposal is appropriate in the context of its location, and I have two amendments that I would like to make. Amendment 1 is to modify condition 11. The modification of condition 11 is the applicant's wording, but it includes applicants. So condition 1, amendment 1 is condition to be modified. Condition 11. Yes. Condition 11 to be modified using the applicant's wording. It is written in part C of documentation.
You just want to take them one at a time?
Yes, if I can.
Okay, that's just for the applicant's wording for condition 11. So that's moved by Mr. Fuentes, seconded by Mr. Syme. Did you wish to speak to it?
Well,
No, my only comments would be I accept that there needs I understand and accept the rationale for having some movement change or some changes to that area. However, I don't accept that the need and nexus has been quantified in a way that requires a raised pavement to be installed. And to ensure there's clarity, I think this wording provides the level of clarity in relation to what is required for that.
Thank you. Mr. Syme, did you wish to speak?
I also have trouble with need and nexus on this. To the extent that a fairly expensive solution is required, I think I accept the evidence of the applicant that a painted line marking will do the job quite satisfactorily. I think it's excessive to go beyond.
Thank you. Did any other panel member wish to speak for or against this amending motion? Councillor Evson, did you wish to say anything?
Yes, if I could, please. Look, I'm not going to support this amendment because I've seen other painted barriers or painted seagull intersections in the city that have been ineffective, and I am very concerned that just a painted section won't stop people from, I guess, sort of pulling out of Della and to turn right and camping in the middle section there. Whereas I'm much more comfortable if there's a physical barrier to create that separation. And that's what I've seen and experienced across the city in other locations where we have similar turning and we don't have any delineation or any physical barriers. So yeah, I'm not going to support this this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Pithirati, did you wish to speak about this amendment? No. I'll speak to it. I'm comfortable with the amendment. As per the mover and second, I have some issue with the need and the nexus related to this. It is about behavioural aspects rather than the lack of significant evidence presented by the city in terms of crash and risk, and I find it hard to find that need and nexus between the amount of turning from this development Obviously, this is an area in transition, and in the future, with more increased development, the need may occur and may need to be reviewed, but that's in the city's court. So I'm happy to support this amendment. Did you say anything further to close?
In closing, I have specifically dealt with condition 11, but I'm not dealing with advice note 1. I'm comfortable that it is only an advice note and it does not hold obligation in the same manner as a condition is. So therefore, I'm comfortable that it's generic enough to be able to be dealt with in the context of the condition itself, providing more specific material and more specific requirement.
Thank you. Those in favour of Amendment 1? Stefante, Hyde and Syme. Those against? That's Pepperati and Epson. That motion is carried 3-2. Ms. Fantis, still with you.
I have said just about everything I want to say. The proposal is a good one in the area. It addresses the street frontages, particularly both streets, in terms of its design. It's an innovative design, and I do like the layout and configuration. Due consideration has been given to placing some of those more noise, continuous noise spaces towards those roads, and I think that's particularly regarding the child play area, and I think there's a positive approach to this design.
Thank you. As seconder, I'll briefly speak. I'm comfortable with the officer's assessment. I thank Mayor Pifferati for highlighting some of the errors and clarifying those. I'm still satisfied with the information and assessment that has been done, noting that this does require some discretion. I've looked at those variations to the development standards. I think the applicant has gone a long way with the design to mitigate those in the relationship of the play areas more to the road rather than to the residential areas. It has elements of residential design as per the DRP assessment. It's got good access, I believe, to Benara and Della, and those roads can distribute the traffic reasonably swiftly to avoid too much impact on the residential area. And I'm comfortable that there is an operational management plan that sits with this. So having considered the conditions, I find it to be quite in accordance with the objectives of the planning scheme, and again with some regard to the draft local planning strategy. I would, however, suggest an amendment 2, which would be a new advice note, which would read, regarding condition 24, the intention is to avoid obscuring glazed surfaces to maintain optimal passive surveillance and activation. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Ms. Lefante. I don't think I need to speak anymore. That's just really providing some clarification as to the intent of that condition and accepting the city officer's desire, as this will run with the land and not necessarily just with the operator. Did you wish to speak a second?
No, it's a good set.
Anybody else want to speak about that amending motion? Those in favour of that amending motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. I have no further comments to make. Did any other panel member wish to speak about this substantive as amended? Member Pifferati, I might hand to you, as I know you're on a time issue.
Yeah, I've already cancelled one meeting, but I am going to speak on this. That's why I've decided to stay. I am not supporting this motion. I don't agree with the appropriateness of the use. I don't believe that it meets the policy in terms of non-residential uses in residential zones. The policy states that non-residential uses in residential zones shall be located adjacent to established commercial, industrial uses or mixed-use zones and facing the same street as those land uses to act as a transition between them and surrounding residential areas. This application absolutely does not meet that that principle, and the assertion that the variation should be supported because it's near the new train station, and that that train station is going to result in intensification of the area is just an absolute furphy. I would like to say that the houses in this area are 1980s, 1990s builds. They take up most of the site that they are located on. Therefore, any intensification would likely require knocking down of existing houses. The value of the land is not worth that. Built form is worth more than the land value. That is not going to happen. It's very similar to the area around the Greenwood train station, which has been around for a lot longer. And you haven't seen any intensification of the residential areas around the Greenwood train station, despite the upzoning in that area. So I can say that I'd comfortably come back in 10 years' time and tell you that there hasn't been intensification of that area. Also, if you zoomed out and you even went much wider, there is absolutely zero commercial uses within anywhere up until Morley Drive and Crimea Street intersection, up until McGilvray Avenue and Benara Road intersection, and up until Beachborough Road and Benara Road. That entire area is 100% residential or community, like with local, like open space. So it absolutely, in terms of planning, does not meet that principle. The community, the residents who apparently are going to benefit from the amenity of this childcare centre are also not supportive, as evidenced by the outstanding amount of submissions that were received in opposition to this application. So I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pimperati. Panel member Councillor Evanson, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. And look, I concur with the points that were raised by the Mayor. Look, I've got the only additional parts I would say is that I'm uncomfortable about the car park location on the side. I think that with a residential abutment to the north, it's very visible from the streetscape, and the neighbours are going to be faced with a 42.5 metre boundary of parking, which is not there now, and that's quite a change for them, and I think that really is a notable loss of amenity. The second part in regards to car parking is as I mentioned, so the noise element. So we've got the visual element from the street side, but also noise for those residents when people during those peak times when we're going to have parents coming and going very quickly. That's a significant change to the residential that was previously there. External to the site and the design, I still have this underlying concern around traffic impact in the area. I am concerned around the vehicle speed and topography on Benara Road. There's a lot of unknowns. There's traffic lights going in with the station, but all of this stuff is very new and no real modelling of understanding of what this is going to, the outcome of all these changes are going to deliver, and that makes me fairly uncomfortable. And while I'm not going to support this application.
Thank you. Other speakers, Mr. Simon?
Look, I will support it. I understand the comments that have been made regarding land use. That said, it's on Benara Road. It's close to the railway station. I think some variation to the word of the policy is justified in this case. In terms of its actual physical appearance, it's a nicely executed facility. It's nicely designed. So I think from that point of view, it's a good thing. I do take the Mayor's comments on how long it might take for development around the train station to occur in this area. About that said, there will be certainly quite a lot of impetus for that over the next little while. So I think there will be some redevelopment. I think the location of the train station is important, and it is within the train station. But besides that, I think the general location, the general design, the general location of the road makes this acceptable from a financial point of view. And I think from an execution point of view, it's a nice design, so I will support it.
Thank you. Ms. Havante, did you wish to close?
No, I have no further comments.
All right. Let's put this matter to the vote. The substantive motion as amended. Those in favour? That's Havante, Hyde and Syme. Those against? That's councillor Everson and Mayor Pepperati. Thank you. The motion is carried 3-2. That brings to close our agenda to part C. We thank people's attendance and patience for that. Just moving ahead with for part D. There are no matters to consider as part of the SAT application, so I don't believe, and no further business. So, there's a couple of SAT matters, but they're not in this local government. No further business. I declare the meeting closed at 12:26. Thank you all.